President Trump is a couple days into his Middle East tour. So far, it's going well. I want to go through some of the biggest stories in the news with my special guest, Enes Freedom. Enes, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, thank you for having me.
So, just some background: Andis Caner Freedom was the former center on the Boston Celtics. He
Yeah.
started his basketball career right here in Utah on the
Mhm.
Utah Jazz, and now he is a leading voice for human rights. I want to go through some of these stories with you. Ennis, I speak to a lot of conservative podcasters and even politicians that believe the biggest threat to the United States is China.
Mhm.
But you're a basketball star, and you've risked your reputation, you've risked your career to expose human rights violations in China, corporations using Chinese slave labor.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on President Trump taking on China economically? And in your mind, why is China such a big threat?
So, for the last 10, 11 years, I focused on the human rights violations in Turkey because of obviously my family was involved. They've been stuck there for what 10, 11 years now. And, you know, after 10, 11 years, I was like, well, God gave me a huge platform and I need to use it to be the voice of not only innocent Turkish people, but all around the world. And when the conversation was about Turkey, actually Adam Silver himself, the commissioner of the NBA, and my teammates, everyone in the NBA was so supportive. So that gave me so much motivation to fight for the dictatorship in Turkey. So when I started to talk about the problems are happening in China, you know, and they literally turned around 180%. I was very confused. I was like, where did all the support go? You know, I do believe that yes, China and Chinese Communist Party is the biggest threat to America, is because, the more I research, the more I realize NBA is only like the one small portion of it. They know Chinese government know they're not strong enough to invade America from the outside, but they can do it from the inside by, taking over NBA, Hollywood, Wall Street, academias, big tech, even Congress and local Congresses. So I was like, someone needs to, go out there and just expose them because especially no athletes will ever do that because obviously they're making millions of dollars from the Chinese government. So I was like, you know what? Let me just go out there, whatever it costs me, with no regret. Just gonna go out there and expose the whole system.
Yeah. The first time I became aware of you and your movement,
Mhm.
it wasn't kneeling or making a big fuss or doing some kind of press conference. The first time I noticed it, you were just writing words on your sneakers,
Mhm.
bringing attention through. Hey, what is he written on his shoes today? How did you come up with that idea? And was there a lot of pushback? Did they try to threaten you
Right.
if you wrote on your shoes?
It's actually a very crazy story because hear me out. It's actually like I laugh at it because it's like I just cannot believe the hypocrisy of it. So during COVID, as you know, I don't know if you watched it or not, but NBA took all the players to Disney and Orlando, and they put us in this hotel, and so we can continue to play basketball. So NBA can make a lot of money from it. And I remember having this conversation with my teammates, the NBA, the players union, and they're like, listen, we're not here to play basketball. We are here to talk about the problems that are happening in America. We are here to fight for social justice and bring awareness and educate the society about what's going on in America. So as a foreigner, like you have no idea what's going on, you know, because I mean, I grew up in America, sure, but like I was not really familiar with the story of the things that are happening in this country. So literally every day I was sitting down, I'm like, dude, like explain it to me. Why are we taking knees? Why are we, because in my home country, Turkey, like during the national anthem, you're not even allowed to move. You're not even allowed to like scratch your head. So like I was very confused. I'm like, this is very interesting. Like we are taking knees and we are like saying all this stuff. I'm like, okay, fine. I guess like this is how it goes. So I wasn't really educated about the situation. So I see all these players. They were putting on their shoes like Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, I Can't Breathe, Black Revolution, Black Lives Matter. So I was like literally trying to understand what those means are. Um, so the NBA was actually like all over this situation. They put all the BLM logos on the floor. They put phrases behind our jersey, which was controlled by the NBA. So if you wanted to like pick, I don't know, like stand with Hong Kong, you're not allowed to put that on your jersey. Only the ones that like the NBA is allowed the words. Anyway, so like I was like, fine, I guess like this is how it goes. So literally 2 years later, um, I started to put these, human rights situation in my shoes. It was free Tibet, free Uyghurs, stand with Hong Kong, stand with Taiwan, stop the organ harvesting. Um, so I was exposing the Chinese, Communist Party's human rights violation. So I was playing for the Celtics. There's actually a playoff series going on right now. I was playing for the Celtics. Our first game was against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden, opening night. Literally, the whole world was there. Every celebrity you can think of, nationally televised. So I put free Tibet on my shoes. I went out there and started to warm up. We sang the national anthem. Literally 1 minute before the game hasn't started yet, we are in a huddle. Two gentlemen from the NBA, they were working for the Celtics, came up to me. They're like, dude, listen, you got to take those shoes off. I'm like, excuse me? They said, your shoes has been getting so much attention internationally. You got to take them off. The game hasn't started yet. Just so you know. So I looked at the rule book. I'm like, there's no against it. I even told them, it's like 2 years ago, if they can put like Black Lives Matter, George, like whatever, if they're allowed to put that on their shoes, I should be allowed to put free Tibet on my shoes. They said, listen, man, NBA has been pressuring us so much. If you don't take your shoes off, I was like, go tell your boss. I don't even care even if I get fined. They said, we're not talking about getting fined. We're talking about getting banned. So think about this. They were threatening me to get banned from the NBA because of the message that I was putting on my shoes. Stefan, I promise it was a perfect moment for me because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test. I closed my eyes. I was like, okay, we have 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech, I turned around. I was like, no, I'm not taking them off. I was like, go tell your boss, go tell Adam, I'm not taking them off. So I played 0 minutes that half. I went in the locker room. I looked at my phone. There was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the message that my manager sent me. He said, every Celtics game is banned in China. It took them 24 minutes to ban every Celtics game on television. I was like, well, that clearly helps my case. That shows the dictatorship and censorship over there. Anyway, the second half started. I played 0 minutes, which I played every game before that. We lost the game. And I wish like you hear the conversation after the game. They're like, the NBPA called me, players union, which I pay thousands of dollars every month to protect my rights against the NBA. They're like, dude, NBA has been pressuring us so much, you can now wear those shoes ever again. I was like, did I break any rules? They said no. I was like, well, then what's the problem? It's like, you know the problem exactly. They pressured me so much. I was like, I promise I'm not going to wear free Tibet shoes ever again. They said, promise. I said, promise. I hang up the phone. Second game, I wore free Uyghur shoes. So they call me after the game. You're a liar. You lied to us. And then I kept wearing it. But it's very funny because Stefan, I'm sure like we keep talking about our freedom in this country, right?
Yeah.
And we just keep bragging about it to the whole world. But like I started to question, are we really free? Right after the game, my teammates woke up to me. They said, dude, this is your last year in NBA. Have fun, but you're never gonna play basketball again. My agent called me, he's like, dude, you're 29 years old. You can't play another 6 years. And if you say another word about China, you're done. You're not only throwing away your career, but you're literally throwing away 40 to 50 million dollars. So go for it. I said, okay.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, you talk a lot about how freedom isn't free,
Mhm.
and you standing up for what you believe, that's pricey, right? Like there's a lot of people that won't stand up for freedom for free. You've got millions, tens of millions of dollars on the line. Maybe someone's pointed this out to you, but it just dawned on me. Ennis
Mhm.
counter freedom kind of sounds like encounter freedom. Um,
Actually like that.
yeah, and
I like that.
encounter freedom, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to help people, not only in America, to say, "Hey, wait a minute, you
Mhm.
have these rights." I'm from the outside telling you, you guys have rights, but you're allowing this pressure
Yeah.
to undermine your rights. Meanwhile, China, they continue to just infiltrate, like
Mhm.
you said, Hollywood, corporations, the NBA. I have to imagine the NBA. They must make so much money off of those China contracts, right?
Billions. Later on we found out 40 NBA owners, I think got tied up close to $10 billion in China. So like I see why now they're all silent and they talk about every other issue in the world but China because it hits their pocket, you know. I even had a conversation with Adam Silver. He's like, he even said it like, listen, it's a different system over there. At the end, we are business. I'm like, Adam, then why are you bragging about social justice, in America? Because I know that it won't hit your pocket. But when it comes to like China, you're silenced because you're making billions of dollars. This is hypocrisy, you know? Um, it's very sad because I mean this is not politics. Like many people, after I started to speak up about China, so many people, including my teammates, like reached out and say like, dude, stay away from politics. I'm like, this is not politics. I don't care if you are from the right, from the left, you vote for Biden, Trump, like whoever you vote, whoever you cheer for, this is human rights. You have to care about it, and like put yourself in their shoes. If your mother, if your sister, if your daughter was in those concentration camps getting tortured and raped every day, would you seriously like still pick money over your morals? To me, it's a very like simple answer. When I ask them those questions, they usually like turn around and leave the locker room, you know? So how could you answer that question? I mean, also these players are like some of them are billionaires. Look at LeBron. He just hit like what 1 billion something, you know? Look at all the other players signing these crazy hundreds of millions of dollars of contract. Like what else do you want, you know? But I think that's the one thing that our world is missing is empathy. We got to put ourselves in their shoes.
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this. I want to talk about the Middle East. I want to talk a little bit about Turkish politics. What are your thoughts on President Trump's tour in the Middle East? So far, he seems to be well received. To me, it seems like he's trying to use business and trade as a way to negotiate peace and human rights. Your
peace.
thoughts on this tour?
I think it's very important, because throughout the years, millions of people has been killed in Middle East, and now finally we have a president and saying enough is enough. I'm literally like, I believe like the President Trump is the only American citizen president that visited Qatar, I believe. Um, so like we have a president, and now using business and bringing trillions of dollars to America, but same time he's bringing peace to Middle East. And a lot of people are just talking about, okay, who's right, who's wrong, this side is right, this side is wrong. While we are discussing who's right, who's wrong on both sides, like thousands and maybe millions of people, innocent people are dying. So no, no, I think so far it's been amazing. He just visited Saudi Arabia. I believe it went really well, and now I think he's just visiting Qatar at this moment. So it's very interesting, man. He doesn't believe in um, enemies. He's literally trying to make peace with everybody. So it's important to see what happens, but obviously you cannot really deny human rights violations on some of the countries out there. But I'm very excited to see what the outcome is going to be. But I mean, I think American economy and I believe their economy is going to be taking off for sure.
Yeah, I think so. During his speech in Saudi Arabia, he said a couple of things that really stood out to me.
Mhm.
He basically he chastised former American presidents, saying, "You've wasted trillions of dollars on war that killed millions of people, and what
Mhm.
did you get for it? Debt. You got a
Yeah.
bunch of debt
Mhm.
that we're now having to deal with." Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, other places, although they're not perfect, they've got stuff to work on. They've used trillions of dollars to build cities. And I
Yeah.
just like, even in my kids' elementary school, they ask them, do you want to be a builder or a wrecker? And I think Trump is trying to create an America that builds, that
Yeah.
does business, that does peace. I think it could change everything going forward.
You know, it was so amazing. I believe he was doing an interview with I believe it was CNN, and the host asked President Trump, was like, "So, what do you think about the war between Russia and Ukraine?" And his answer was so amazing. He's like, "I just want people to stop dying on both sides, you know, because people behind the tables are the one that giving the orders, but innocent people on the streets are the one that pays the highest price. And we're talking about kids, women, elderly, innocent civilians." So his answer was like, "Oh my God, yeah, we just keep thinking about, okay, which side is wrong, which side is wrong, you know, but like we should care about what can we do to stop this war and stop the killing of innocent on both sides, you know." No, his answer was perfect, and then that was the day when I realized, I was like, okay, I'm not a politician, I'm an activist, and there are people innocent on both sides. So whatever I do, I need to bring awareness about the innocent civilians and what can we do to stop the wars. So it was a perfect answer to me, and that really inspired me.
Yeah. Although it wasn't perfect to CNN, they wanted to, we got you. You're a Russia
Mhm.
fan, or you hate Ukraine. It's like they were trying to trick him. You mentioned, Enes, the good things are going to come out of this Middle East tour. Let me just share with my audience and you a few. So Saudi Arabia signed $600 billion in investment into the United States. Within 24 hours of meeting with President Trump in person, Prince bin Salman said he's going to push the council to make it $1 trillion.
Wow.
He lands in Qatar. They say they're going to invest in the United States. They immediately announce, we're going to buy 160 airplanes from Boeing, an America manufacturing airplane company. That's a $200 billion order. President Trump is like the greatest salesman on planet Earth, right? Their stock is now up 50% in the last couple of weeks. I just think this is a man who's realized you can have the military go in and be an instrument of death, or you can come in with business and you can say, let's find the win-win situation where everybody has a better life.
Yeah.
And I just, that's one thing that I respect about President Trump is, they make him out to be this like evil Nazi gangster. And at the end of the day, he's a pretty tender-hearted guy that doesn't want people dying all over the world. For that, I just think, as you mentioned, things are going to be really good coming out of this tour, I believe.
Yeah, I would have never thought that using business to bring peace will work, but it looks like it's working so far. But no, it's amazing, man. I think even the American people, obviously everybody was worried about economy for like what 3 4 weeks ago, but I think people definitely needs to be a little patient. But no, I mean, so far, I don't want to really say it because it's like I'm American now, and it hurts me saying it. For the last like what 3.5 4 years, America was kind of like a laughing stock, you know, in the Middle East and some of the other countries out there. Because I was keep hearing it from my friends, but I think it's time for America to shine again, and say, okay, we are the leader of the free world, and we can bring peace. And also, while we bring peace, people will stop dying, and people both sides going to be happy. It's a win-win situation. So now I'm really excited, man. Finally, America put his foot down and say, okay, let's try to bring peace. No more innocent people dying.
Yeah, you're right. They just held a high diplomatic meeting in
Mhm.
Switzerland,
Yeah.
and China admitted we took advantage of America because we knew Joe Biden would do nothing,
Hmm.
and they were totally right. Okay, let me switch gears with you. You were born in Turkey. You've been very vocal about President Erdogan not being a good member of NATO. You've
Hmm.
called him a dictator. You said he has supported Hamas and Hezbollah in the past. He had his
Yeah.
top political opponent jailed in
Hmm.
order to stay in power. Is Turkey really a member of NATO? And if you were to go back to Turkey, would you actually be in trouble based on some of the things you've said?
I mean, they revoked my passport. They put my name on Interpol list. I'm really only allowed to travel to 29 countries in the world, because every other country I could get deported back to Turkey. I haven't seen my family, 10, 11 years. They put my dad in jail. Um, Recently they put a bounty on my head. You know, um, so it sucks because I love Turkey. I love my flag. I love my people. I don't know if you ever tried it, but Turkish food is one of the most delicious food you can actually try. It's so delicious. But the reason it sucks is because you have a NATO ally, right, helping terrorist organizations out there. And I'm not just saying that. There are lots of reports out there. Erdogan, I believe it was like around 6 years ago, Erdogan got caught sending truckloads of weapons to ISIS. I mean, everybody knows how he supports Hamas, Hezbollah, Muslim Brotherhood. Everybody knows that Erdogan, when Qatar kicked Hamas out, Erdogan let him in, and Erdogan gives passports to these terrorist groups and terrorist leaders so they can go in and out of other European countries. He threatened whole Europe and say, "Listen, if you don't listen what I have to say, I'm going to let 10 million Syrian refugees goes to Europe." So and these European countries, like, they don't know if they're a good guy, bad guy, terrorist, not terrorist. So like, you don't know that. So um, but I think that Erdogan, the only one of the few person that Erdogan fears is actually President Trump. You know, so I think President Trump can bring peace in Turkey too, because right now there are mass protests. There are now millions of people in Turkey are just like on the streets and just confused. Like, why would you do that? So yes, Turkey is a dictatorship, um, but I mean, President Trump worked with so many authoritarian regimes and made them better and pushed them to care about human rights in their country as well. So I hope that that's what the outcome will be, because I'm not saying let's put sanctions on Turkey. I'm not saying let's you know say the correct, because we need Turkey. Turkey is a NATO ally. We have an American air base over there. Iran is one of the biggest threat to America, and so that's why we need Turkey for it. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we're gonna let Erdogan do whatever he wants. But everyone knows that Erdogan wants a kingdom. He doesn't want a democracy. He wants to rule till he dies, and then once he's gone, his son gonna take over. But no, Turkey is not a lost case. But I believe once Erdogan regime is in power, that's not going to change.
Okay, interesting. It's a country I've been curious to visit.
Mhm. Beautiful
So
country.
yeah, I've heard
Beautiful
the
country.
food, the way they treat you, the prices, everything is really great. In our final minutes together, Enes, you've got a book out, The Name of Freedom. Tell me and my audience about your book.
Whew, that book I really deeply care about is because it talks about a young kid, who was from Turkey, growing up very anti-American, anti-West, anti-Semitic. His friends are burning American flags to tell him to hate America, Americans, Christian, and he's realizing that, okay, this is not right, and he's giving a promise to his mom. It's like, listen, man, my mom said, don't hate anyone before you meet him. gave a promise to my mom, came to America, and meeting with Americans, Christians, Jewish people for the first time, and now he's realizing that okay, everything that he's been taught so far was just a big lie. And now, what can he do to inspire millions of kids in the Middle East so they won't grow up anti-West, anti-American, anti-Christian? And same time, this book will expose many companies um, and people who's been bound down to Chinese dictatorship for a very long time. So, and it talks about the rights we have in this country. Because when I became an American citizen, I walked in a locker room. I was so happy. I was wearing this American flag with a T-shirt on my chest, and many of my teammates, were just giving me this dirty look. I was like, "What happened?" They said, "Well, you have no idea," and they just started to bash America. I was like, I listen, guys, our season is about to be over. And whenever our season over, I'm gonna buy your first class ticket. And let's just travel to some of these countries out there, like Iran, like China, like Russia, like North Korea, like Turkey. Forget about calling them trash. You criticize those regimes, you and your family member will be in jail and tortured to death. I feel like sometimes we take our freedom for granted in America because if someone, obviously, I'm not saying America is perfect, but we have so many things that we need to work on. But when someone goes out there and criticize America, and I was like, I know for facts that you don't travel enough. So no, I'm really excited about this book, man. I think this book is going to inspire millions of kids in Middle East and around the world who's been, who's growing up to taught to hate America, Christians, Jewish people, and the West. So it's going to be out there on October 7th. So you can literally just go on Amazon and put "In the Name of Freedom," and you can pre-order it.
Okay. I'm going to put a direct link so that my audience can find it quickly. That sounds like an amazing book. Being open-minded to the different cultures and the way that people live, and not just immediately hating people or worrying about people. That's such a great message. Enes, thank you so much for coming on. If Enes Kanter Freedom and Counter Freedom, if that takes off, I just want credit. The Utah Jazz helped you. Stephen Gardner helped you. So thank you very much for coming on. If people want to follow you online, what's the best place? Maybe your Twitter X account?
My X account is @NSFreedom. Same with my Instagram @NSFreedom. You can follow the latest and you can be part of my journey.
Okay, great. Well, I will put those down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.